Good morning, YouTube. Today's video is going to be Billy Tales number 2. And it's going to be about a character by the name of Fuzzy Bob. That's his name. And how Fuzzy Bob was involved with hacking the Pentagon mainframe. Now, just a little background. I met Fuzzy Bob on my first contract with MCI. We were both on the development team that created the traffic reporting system. Won't bother you with any more details than that, but I will tell you there's a whole host of characters that I will be introducing you to that I met there as these videos go on, because there was a lot of shenanigans going on at MCI. Anyway, so let's get started. So Fuzzy Bob was one of these contractors that I worked with, and he was absolutely brilliant. Most of them were. The ones that weren't brilliant didn't last long. And Fuzzy Bob was, like a lot of brilliant people, he had some eccentricities. Like, he loved the Grateful Dead. He went and he had a really nice suit that he bleached all the color out and then tie-dyed it so that he could wear it to the Grateful Dead concerts. And he insisted that all of his speaker equipment have gold leads. Anyway, so Fuzzy Bob's telling me this story one day about how he, when he was a teenager, and his friends hacked the Pentagon mainframe. And it starts off with them dumpster diving in the dumpsters over at the Pentagon. Now, this was before the Beirut barracks bombing, and security was extremely lax in Washington, D.C. If you didn't live there, you wouldn't believe it, but yeah, you could pretty much do whatever you wanted. You could walk into the Pentagon and ask the guard if you could use their bathroom, and they didn't have any problem, and nobody followed you, right? Yeah. So they were there, and the dumpsters at the Pentagon digging through the trash because they were finding some like really cool pictures of tanks and planes and ships, and they liked them, right? I mean, they were like 10th and 9th, 10th graders. And that's the kind of things that you find interesting, apparently, when you're that age. And one day, they came across this binder that indicated from its title that it was the manual for their mainframe computer system, which was really bad luck for the Defense Department, because another habit or hobby these kids had was computers. Back then, there weren't any computers that you could buy. If you wanted to have a personal computer, you had to build it yourself from parts that you could get at Radio Shack. And then, of course, there was no software to run on these PCs, these early PCs, so they also had to write their own operating systems. Well, a little cult or clique or whatever had developed, and they were in contact with all the other kids that had similar hobbies, and they were all sharing code and stuff like that. So the bottom line is they were very proficient at a very early age with computer technology. So they realized what they had. And unfortunately, again, for the Defense Department, there was a Post-it note on the inside of the manual. And that Post-it note had a user ID and password on it. Now, at first, they didn't realize what they had, but after they started to read the manual, they started to figure out that this was how you got into the system. And, of course, back then, there was no internet, at least not that ordinary people could access. You had to actually dial up the computer with a phone number, and it would answer and talk like, and then if you didn't have a modem or a computer to talk back to it, you could talk to it. So anyway, these guys went ahead and were able to dial into the mainframes, the Pentagon's mainframe, and were able to start accessing files. And by the way, back then, there weren't any like relational databases. Okay, everything was a flat file. But what they did notice is that there were some files that user ID couldn't get access to. But they also knew that they had found similar Post-it notes in the past in the dumpsters that had user ID and passwords on them. They didn't recognize that at the time, but now that they knew what they were looking for, the race was on. So they would go dumpster diving looking for these Post-it notes, right? And then they would try the Post-it note to see if this one had access to the files, right? Well, there you go. And then they would meet, I think it was every Wednesday evening at the food court at the Pentagon City Mall to talk about what they had found. Now, the problem is they would also talk about this stuff in school. And one of the kids that was overhearing their conversation or was paying attention to what they were doing, his father worked for the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency. So when his son came home and started asking him questions about this stealth fighter that the Air Force had and that the kids at school were talking about, before anybody even knew about technology, this caused a problem. So the FBI got involved, and it wasn't too hard to round these kids up. They just, instead of going to each one of their houses, they just waited for them to show up at the food court, and they just rounded them all up. Okay? So they round these kids up, and they go, naughty, naughty. This is stuff that you're not supposed to do. Okay, in fact, this is a felony, and you can go to jail for a very long time. But because you're so young, and, your parents are, have a little juice in the bureaucracy, we're going to make a special deal for you. As long as you don't talk to any reporters, and this doesn't end up in the news, we're going to let everything go. Bygones are bygones. Now, just to add a little more flavor to the story, half of those kids are working for the government now, and at like the NSA, and the government realizes talent when it sees it, and they got recruited apparently. Now, of course, this is all according to Fuzzy Bob. Now, Fuzzy Bob might have been telling me a tale, but something tells me that Fuzzy Bob, the guy was just, you'd have to meet him. But yeah, I think that story's true. Maybe it's not, I don't know, but it certainly is hilarious. And it kind of goes to show what the government will do when it screws up. Now, why do I say that? Well, next Friday, I'm going to create another video, and this is going to be about, I haven't invented a nickname for him yet, but this associate of mine that tried to steal a jetliner at Dulles, because he got in the exact same deal. Anyway, we'll leave that for next week. I hope you enjoy the story, and feel free to, come here. Feel free to give some suggestions and in the comments, and we'll see if it will jog my mind and see what else I can remember. Anyway, enjoy your day.